Hello and good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome to the Blue Source webinar this morning. What's coming next in Symantec Enterprise Vault 11? Very pleased to have you with us this morning. My name is Ross Evans. I am going to just briefly introduce our two presenters today in a moment. So just a quick overview of the agenda today. I'm going to jump into the introductions in just a second. We'll do a brief bit of scene setting around what's sort of going on with the archiving market at the moment, what some of our customers are telling us, and how the archiving kind of functionality and demands are evolving at the moment. We'll then hand over to our colleague Jason Dalzell from Symantec, who will be talking about what's happening in EV11. We've then got a brief demo of the latest functionality in the user search, which is probably one of the most important sort of upgrades to the features within EV11. We'll then have a quick look at sort of extending the sort of platform investment that you've made, and after that have a quick look at overall, what's the current situation with moving archives to the cloud, or sort of just a broad look at cloud archiving strategy. And as I said, after that we'll follow up with a quick Q&A. So by way of introductions, if I'd like to firstly introduce my colleague Mustafa Najjar. He is Blue Source's Cloud Solutions and Managed Services Specialist. He has a very sort of broad remit here, looking after our customers who utilize our sort of cloud and managed services for their not just Enterprise Vault, but also things like Exchange, SharePoint, and Link as well. He'll be talking a little bit about some of the developments and market shifts around cloud. And then, as I mentioned, we've got Jason Dalzell. He's a information management specialist and long-time employee and expert in this space from Symantec. So very warm welcome to the both of them. So without too much further ado, I'd like to introduce you now to Mustafa, who's going to sort of take over from this point and talk to you about what's happening in the archiving market.
Good morning all. So in terms of evolving archiving demands, so what's actually happening in terms of archiving? So there's now the need and ability to be able to access your archive on the go. There's a growth in the public space in Office 365 and Gmail and what that means in terms of native archiving. There's a growth in the social media and more collaborative applications such as Link and Yammer and what that means in terms of compliance and governance. So in terms of that growth, what's actually impacting that? So there's the data growth, so there's an increase in data growth. There's obviously a cost element attributed to that. There's a compliance element and there's a legal element. So in terms of data growth, what does that look like? So we're anticipating in terms of research as 10 to 25%, which actually fits in with what the poll is actually saying. So the anticipated data growth, year-on-year growth compounded, is between 10 and 25%. The average cost per budget is actually only growing. The annual IT budget is only growing by 5%. In terms of compliance, 30% of the users that we've polled in terms of the IDC and Osterman research map policies with legal regulations currently. So there's, in terms of retention and expiration of data, the ability to be able to classify that data and the ability to be able to search and interrogate that data and present it in a timely fashion back to the business. So there's a massive gap between the compliance and regulatory, the legal policies that you have in place and how they map to the regulations that are on you as a business. From a legal perspective, 60% of companies currently have or lack they have inadequate e-discovery policies in place in order to be able to search and interrogate that data, retrieve that data, and use it and present it in a timely fashion. So we're really lacking behind the US, and the market is actually growing in terms of that space. So we're seeing a huge drive and growth in the e-discovery space. So what are the top 5 customer perspectives that we're seeing? Performance in Exchange is now less of an issue. Before, archiving was about taking data out of Exchange in order to improve performance. Data growth is impacting backups and storage costs. We're seeing that more and more. So in terms of archiving and because of the growth of data, the backup windows are increasing forever and ever in terms of size, which means it's stretching your backup windows and putting pressure on your backups. And the archives are moving towards the cloud governance and functionality permitting. We want to leverage the investment through file archiving and e-discovery. And there's a genuine desire in the marketplace to outsource this, so to actually get rid of the archiving so-called headache. And we're seeing that more and more in the market space. So what's great about Enterprise Vault today in terms of in terms of an application? It's currently the best single archiving platform for email files, for SharePoint and other sources of data, and continues to do that, and it's growing in that space. It's simple, seamless, and intuitive for users to be able to use. So its integration within Outlook and how users are able to search and retrieve their archived information is still seamless. It's very, very highly configurable in terms of the policies, the range of important business issues and different teams within the organizations, and in terms of how you can split it and segment it within the organization from HR perspective, from an end user perspective, and the ability to be able to search that. It's a complete solution across retention, compliance, and discovery. So it solves all the issues from a retention perspective, from a compliance perspective in terms of journaling, and from a discovery perspective in terms of discovery accelerator, and then the ability to have advanced e-discovery such as Clearwell. It still remains the market leader in enterprise archiving. So I'm now going to hand over to Jason, who's going to give you a sneak peek in what's new in Enterprise Vault 11 and how EV11 now addresses some of those features.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, so as the guys said, I just want to run through quite high level what the main features are in the upcoming release, EV11. Before we begin, a fairly standard disclaimer slide, but because this release still actually hasn't been released to market yet, this is still considered to be roadmap information. Genuinely, it's due for Q1 release, our Q1 release, which is in the next 3 months. So the chances of any of this changing is very, very slim. However, do bear in mind that until it's actually released, this is still considered to be roadmap information. Okay, so in terms of the actual features themselves in EV11, so let me just go back a slide. There are 4 key features in EV11. The first 3 are really the ones that we're probably going to spend the majority of time on, because they're the ones that you'll probably get the most visibility from. And then in the background, a little bit happening around administration and monitoring, just in terms of making things easier to use and making admin's life a little bit easier. So the first feature, which is the one that probably the people have been waiting for a very long time, is the Mail Connect. I can remember back 5, 6, 7 years ago, we had lots of people coming to us asking for the ability to access their archive via BlackBerry. At the time, BlackBerry was the predominant platform of choice for mobile mail. And we went down a development path of developing specific functionality to connect with BlackBerry. And then suddenly iOS came along, and then we've had Android and we've had Windows Mail, and we've had lots of different platforms come along. So what we've done is we've introduced an EV IMAP server. So in effect, it just gives you the ability to connect from a mobile device to a remote archive, but then treat it exactly as if it was just a mailbox on your mobile device. So really, there's no limitation in terms of what mobile device this can be. As long as it can connect to IMAP, then it will work fine. Likewise, you can work with cloud-based systems, so things like Gmail or Office 365. It just basically extends the ability to connect from obviously Exchange right through to anything that you can connect to over IMAP. We can't really demo this predominantly because it's obviously I can't really show you what's on my iPhone or on my iPad or whatever. So what we've done is we've got a screenshot here which shows on an iPad. It just shows the standard mail client built into an iPad. I mean, I guess the couple of things that are worth pointing out is it's a little bit difficult to see on the screenshot. On the very top left-hand side, you can see the back-facing arrow, which tells you that you can go back into the archive. So this is showing you we're now browsing our actual archive on the iPad. And then on the right-hand side, where you've got the action arrow, you have the ability to interact with this as if it was a standard mail client. So reply, forward, etc. And obviously you can move things around. So I mean, if I was to hit edit and select an item, I can move it from my archive to my mailbox, from my mailbox to my archive, from my mailbox to the cloud. As long as you've got IMAP connectivity, you can move it around wherever you want to. So that's probably the sort of one of the certainly the big headline features. Say we can't really demo that, but what we can do is we can demo the Enterprise Vault search capability. So when I get to the end, I'm going to drop out of this and actually let you see the new search GUI. So, you know, for those who've been using EV for a while, the inbuilt search in the actual mail client itself, so if we use Outlook as an example, it's showing its age. It's a little bit slow. It's a little bit clunky. The functionality is not great. So therefore, what we did for Enterprise Vault 11 is we have completely rewritten the Enterprise Vault search capabilities. So this is written in HTML5, which gives us the ability to work across, you know, pretty much any browser on any operating system. As long as there is an HTML5 compliant browser available, then we can use it. It does mean that for people who are using, and they are still out there, things like IE7, IE8, for example, they're not necessarily going to have the best experience, but for people who are using up-to-date, modern browsers that will support HTML5, then they'll get a very rich experience. In terms of the features, I mean, I can show you most of these features when we actually drop into the demo as such. But you know, things like virtual scrolling. So again, previously in the search client, you had pagination. So you had 25 items per page, for example, and you had 10 pages, 50 pages, whatever. Virtual scrolling is simply where it loads the first 25, and as you get to the bottom, it then loads the next 25. So you don't have to worry about moving through pages. You can sort of dynamically move through the screens, etc. Just jump onto the next slide, and I mean, you're going to see this better in the demo, I guess. But you know, very much a sort of a standard look and feel. So what you see today with things like Archive Explorer, with the web-based search, with the inbuilt search in the actual EV in Outlook for the EV client, that's pretty much all going to go away and be replaced by this standard look and feel of search across all of the options. So rather than having a different search experience in different places, you have a very similar search experience across all of the different platforms. Like I say, we'll drop into a demo of that in a few moments. So two other features. The first of which is PSP migration enhancements. So there were some enhancements in EV 10.04, which were brought out around how we do client-driven PSP migration and things like scripting of PSP migrations. However, there still were some gaps in that. The biggest gap, probably particularly for users who had a large number of PSPs, was actually around, I guess, the experience for the administrator in terms of how they manage that migration. So there never was a very good dashboard or reporting to let you know how many have I done, how many have I got to do, where am I in terms of the overall process. So again, you know, I think on the next screen there's some slightly bigger screenshots. But what we can see here, for example, on the bottom left-hand side, is just a dashboard, and the dashboard showing a sort of a progress overview in terms of the number that's been found, the number that's been migrated, the number that have had errors, for example, and then you can filter down on that as well. And then on the right-hand side, again, just a very high level dash. But let's jump through to the next slide. So some specific screenshots then. So we have the ability now to do filtering within PST migration. So it gives us the ability to, for example, if you're an administrator, to go in and, okay, I only want to filter on this file server, or I only want to filter on this user or this location or this group of dates. you can see at the top there's some filters already being created. So we've created, for example, a filter for PST files larger than 500 megabytes. So only show me the status of PSTs over 500 megs, or only show me the PSTs that have failed, for example. The bottom right-hand side, you can see how you can build those. You can build those filters, so you can sort of build up a totally bespoke filter. There is also a new feature around how we ingest password-protected PST files. So in the past, there have been some workarounds, but it hasn't been particularly successful. There's now a new process, and anybody who's interested in this, there's a white paper coming out imminently around what this actually does in terms of being able to import those PSTs. But it gives you certainly a much higher success rate for migrations against any sort of protected PST. It is still worth saying that PST migration it's not a sort of a quick step thing where you do it on a Friday night and it's going to be finished by Sunday evening, for example. Still does require quite a lot of planning, quite a lot of preparation. It needs to be something where there's some thought gone into it. So whilst these features make it a little bit easier, make it a little bit more user friendly, they still don't negate the need to be able to set up a process and run through it in an official and sort of procedural way. So just to jump into the last feature. So in EV 10.03, we introduced an agent for SCOM to be able to monitor and to some degree manage Enterprise Vault within SCOM. So on the screen, I've got a couple of screenshots. The one at the back actually is just showing the EV servers and sort of a high-level status overview of the EV servers. And the one to the front then is actually showing the event logs from EV. So they're being pulled from EV into SCOM. So anyone who's using SCOM for centralized management across the environment or across the majority of the environment, it takes away the requirement to have to go into EV and monitor EV separately and then go into SCOM and monitor other applications and servers, etc. We've enhanced that in 11 specifically, where we've extended the monitoring from just the server level to things like, for example, EV databases. If you're backing up EV and you get a problem when you're backing up EV, you can get notifications of failed backups, for example, sent into SCOM. So a lot of this really is about making the admin's life as simple as possible, whether that's the actual EV admin or whether it's the backup guys or the storage guys, for example. Obviously, if you're not using SCOM, then the benefits are lessened somewhat, but certainly we're seeing a massive uptake of SCOM in Microsoft shops, and the demand has been there to facilitate this. So the final piece then around EV11 is, it's entitled compatibility changes. Actually aren't really that many compatibility changes, I guess. The hardware and software requirements are pretty much the same as they've always been for EV10. There's nothing specific in EV11 which gives you a requirement to be able to do or to need more performance. So the minimum is Server 2008 R2. Windows 2012 is supported from 10.04 and above, and Windows 2012 R2 is pending at the moment. We do support VMware and we support Hyper-V, so you can install EV into both virtual platforms. And there's a white paper which specifically details what's out there and how to configure it and how to get the best out of it. But very much supported, and for a lot of certainly mid-sized environments, it's becoming almost the de facto choice now for deployment into new environments. The bottom piece is probably a little bit more important around what's no longer supported by EV11. So as of EV11, SQL 2005 will no longer be supported. So as it says, the minimum will be SQL 2008 R2. Likewise, Exchange 2000 will no longer be supported, and Outlook 2003 will no longer be supported. Now, as it says in brackets after Outlook 2003, for those who are still using 2003 client, you can work in a sort of a backwards compatibility mode where you can use an EV10 add-in to the EV client, which will still allow you to interact with Outlook 2003. But really, our support for operating systems, clients, databases, etc., across the company, not just in EV, is very much driven by vendor support. So as soon as Microsoft drops support for an OS or drops support for a database, it forces our hand in many ways because it doesn't give us the ability to go back to Microsoft for support or development work or whatever. There is a short link there to the compatibility guide. If you've got any queries, have a look at the compatibility guide. If it's not answered in there, get in touch with your BlueSource account manager or get in touch with your Symantec account manager, and we can look into the specifics of your situation. I don't think it's going to impact a massive amount of people. I mean, I don't have that many users who are still using Exchange 2000, but I'm sure there will be some out there. So it's worth being aware of that as part of any sort of migration plan. Okay, so this is the inbuilt search built into the actual Outlook client itself. As you can see, it's a significant change in terms of the look and feel to how it was previously. Still sort of a fairly common look and feel, I guess, to Outlook, which is obviously very much by design. So, a couple of things here. Down the left-hand side of the screen, you've got access to all of your different archive sources. So anything you've got access to through EV, you've got access to down the left-hand side of the screen. Obviously, as you can see, my mailbox is the main folder, but I've also got access to a colleague's mailbox as well. I've got delegate rights to a colleague's mailbox, which would give me some permissions to be able to work through that. Really, the key area here, as you'd expect, is the search box at the top of the screen. So if I go into the search box at the top of the screen and just simply type in, I'm just going to type in a phrase, hit search. This is running on a beta environment internally, so I was getting some certificate errors coming up earlier. No, it doesn't look so. Oh, yes, it is. So that's just an internal thing. But as you can see, it's brought me up all of the hits, 538 items for BlueSource marketing. But now you can start to get a lot more granular with how you interact with this. So, for example, pretty much in the same way as a lot of search engines work. If I put that in quotes rather than just searching for BlueSource or marketing, it's now narrowed that down to 12 items. It's only found 12 items which contain BlueSource marketing as a phrase. You can then start to interact with it. So if we click up at the top right-hand side, it's a little bit hard to see in the demo, but there's an advanced search button. What the advanced search button allows you to do is it allows you to build a query. So if I click the first box, here's all the things you can query on. So as you would expect, to, from, things like the size, the importance, the subject, the content, subject or the content. And then the next box gives you the ability to be able to contain everything, any of, contains, phrase, etc. And you can build as many of these as you want to be able to build pretty much as complex a query as you like. And as you run down through that, obviously, and you build your query, there's a box here, search within attachments. So if you don't want to search within the attachments, within the index attachment, then you can switch that off. But then probably the most important one, certainly for me, is if I go up here and type in, I'm just going to use my own name as an example. So I search my own name, and this time, again, I search for BlueSource marketing. So this is going to bring me up, obviously, a much smaller number of results. So once I've done that, if I click on search, it now brings me back only four results. But the key thing for me is here, I can now click on save. And by clicking on save, I'm not going to change the name of it, but I mean, you can obviously change that. When I click on save, if you look over here on the right-hand side, for your most commonly accessed favorites, for your most commonly accessed searches, you can go in and run those searches very quickly and easy without having to rebuild them. There is more flexibility. So in the actual display pane itself, for example, you can choose which columns you show. So we've got pretty much all of them shown here, except for a few of the lesser ones. But you've got the ability to go in and customize those. You've got the ability to go in and move the order of them around. So very much I guess, what people expect today in a sort of a modern browser type environment. Okay, so there isn't really anything else that I can show on this. I mean, I guess it's almost the obvious, but as I click on an item, it shows me down below the refreshed version of the item. It shows me the attachments in exactly the same way. If I double click on an item, it just opens the item up through the web browser, and then I tell it I want to open it in Outlook, and it's opened it in Outlook as a normal email message. So pretty much everything you would expect in terms of the user experience, but I think much improved and certainly much more performant than what was there previously.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Jason. I think what you'll see from that is actually EV11's really very much been a huge leap forward in terms of what users are going to experience with EV. Now, obviously, EV10 brought us sort of 64-bit indexing and some sort of key under the hood changes. EV11, as I say, is much more kind of a front-end refresh, which I think your users will really thank you for, and really will keep sort of EV as a really relevant solution for you. So what we're going to do now, we're going to just have a quick look at obviously, as most people here are EV users, just how you can really make the most of your EV investment. So I'm going to hand back to Mustafa now. Emmers, you have the stage.
EV11 really now sets the scene in terms of addresses a lot of the requests really that we've been seeing from customers in terms of the need and ability to be able to access your archive on the go, the ability to be able to interact with cloud-based or public cloud solutions such as Office 365 and Gmail, and the ability to be able to and the growth in social media and more collaborative applications, and how that impacts essentially and how that impacts the user, the customer base currently. So from a EV11 perspective, as you all know, it does file and SharePoint archiving. So the ability to be able to reduce the number of files in terms of size, and the ability to be able to archive SharePoint versions, SharePoint files files within SharePoint in terms of version control, and archive those. From a social media perspective, using third-party tools such as Actions, the ability to be able to archive chats that internal users might be having and be able to run discovery tools on there. The e-discovery platform in terms of DA and giving you the ability to be able to search across a multitude of files. And from an instant messaging perspective, I know we touched upon this, from an IM and presence perspective, and in terms of the ability to be able to archive those files and search across them. And that's all underpinned essentially by the mobile access side. So you're now able to access those archived files on the go from tablets such as Android or iPads, and they're readily presented to your users. That's all now being underpinned by the Clearwell Enterprise e-discovery tool, which gives you the facility to be able to search across all of that. So it's now more about intelligent information ownership rather than just compliance, essentially, and regulatory compliance and reduction in terms of or storage optimization, so to speak. It's more about now the ability to be able to present that data, search across that data, and discover that data very quickly. So what's happening in the archiving and cloud strategy going forward? So we're seeing a lot in the customer space in terms of customers now moving or looking at software as a service type models for their archiving tool, for their archiving platform going forward. And to be honest, I couldn't understand it, because EV.cloud, Mimecast are all software as a service type models, and it's a one size fits all type approach. So you're really sacrificing a lot of the functionality and the bespokeness that you get with a superior product like Enterprise Vault for a one size fits all commodity type archiving platform that acts essentially as a dumping ground for your archiving needs. And that's really being also bundled in by Office 365. I don't know if you're familiar with Office 365, but Office 365 essentially, the archiving platform is essentially another mailbox on there, and all your data is really presented as another mailbox. But the power lies essentially in being able to search and discover that data and what you're able to do with that data rather than just dumping it there. So I know we touched briefly upon this. So a lot of customers are within that type of environment where they're sort of sacrificing functionality or bespoke deployment of Enterprise Vault with scalability and a one-size-fits-all, especially because of the pricing model. So what they're doing essentially, they're leveraging those economies of scale that a software as a service type brings in order to present cost savings to the business. And we're seeing more and more of that. So so to address those issues, BlueSource are actively looking at that. But that brings along its own challenges. So one size fits all, you'd need to look at your governance and regulations and how that impacts in terms of having your data in essentially a cloud public platform. What are the entry and exit costs essentially for long term? So if you found out that this wasn't right for you and you wanted to retrieve your data or move your data back out, there's often hefty ingestion fees to come into these types of platforms, and you obviously there's a stop measure in there in terms of that you'd need to extract your data into PST and then ingest that data because of the proprietary platform. So what's the impact on the users in terms of reduced functionality? So you're often sacrificing functionality, or you're sacrificing rich integration within Outlook for sort of a web-based GUI that's acting as your archiving platform, and what that impact on the user is in terms of training. The other element is, do you essentially require detailed policy management in terms of bespoke retention categories, bespoke classification of services, the ability to be able to segregate your data and outsource that in terms of in terms of search and discovery functionality, and essentially to be able to be in control of what data you're able to expire and retain, and what the impact is on the business. So do you see archiving essentially as a commodity in terms of a dumping ground for that data, or do you see it more as the ability to be able to search and discover that data and how you can utilize it best for the company? So I just wanted to sort of introduce and touch upon EV24/7 and what we're doing essentially in the public cloud space. So as you well know, BlueSource expertise really stems from the application management side. So as a result, really our intrinsic understanding of Enterprise Vault and how the application functions, really combined with the Microsoft expertise that we have, it really gives us the ability and the choice to deploy and support this application essentially from anywhere. So what we're able to do essentially is leverage a public cloud service provider like Microsoft Azure, for example, to bring the sheer economies of scale that you get in terms of having such a scalable and flexible cloud service. So leveraging that in terms of the £500 million data centers, and while maintaining the functionality and richness of the application brings. So we're seeing a lot of interest in the public cloud offering. The functionality and user experience are still the trade-off in terms of EV.cloud and Mimecast. Public infrastructure as a service, it does offer an alternative to the SaaS model. And we're essentially preparing to launch EV24/7 Enterprise Vault as a service on that platform. We are currently running it in Microsoft Azure. We're in and EV11 is currently in beta 5. So just to give you an indication. So I wanted to touch upon really the conceptual architecture that we see it going out in terms of how it would look in a Windows or a public cloud services provider. So what we'd essentially do, we'd essentially be extending your domain controller. We'd be siloing that uh, that that deployment. We'd have your own application servers essentially running, your Microsoft SQL servers essentially running there, and we'll be utilizing their sheer storage capacity in order to be able to bring that. And what we're doing essentially, we're leveraging the BlueSource managed services service that we offer in terms of service management center from here, from the UK, from the US, and Bulgaria, in order to bring you a software as a service type model that's bespoke and built for you as a customer. So what essentially you're doing is you're protecting the existing investment that you've made with Enterprise Vault. You're gaining all the features that you of EV11, including the IMAP, so the ability to be able to access your archive on the go from a public cloud services perspective. The infrastructure and application, there's no infrastructure and application to manage anymore. You decide your own. You continue to decide your own archiving policies and your administrative policies. The cloud storage economies totally make sense in terms of leveraging that as a storage platform. There's no compromise on the functionality. We're getting greatly reduced migration costs because you no longer need to move your data into PST format and then readjust it into the platform. We can robocopy the data directly into that platform, and there's a minimal impact on users, and there is no adaptivity that you have to go to from a user perspective. So if you're not essentially ready for the cloud and you continue to have on-site deployments, then you might want to consider the BlueSource Platinum Managed Service, which is guaranteeing the 99.5 uptime for Enterprise Vault. We're financially backing it with our SLAs. We offer the bundled service in terms of the updating service and the application management and OS management. We deploy NetIQ as a monitoring agent, and we bespoke that for Enterprise Vault. So there's certain thresholds that we look on in terms of Enterprise Vault, and that feeds back into our SMC. We offer a real-time service delivery manager view through the customer portal, so you can sort of also see what's happening within your environment real time, whether it's on site, whether it's in a public cloud deployment, or whether it's a hybrid deployment. There's bespoke change management process, so we overlay our change management with yours in order to be able to provide that end-to-end service and platform. So I'm now going to open it up really for questions and answers and see what you guys think.
So we had one question here come in, or just a couple of questions here. So I think we'll pitch these to Jason first. So firstly, Jason, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Good. So question number one, will browser search still be available? Customer has edited custom properties.xml to show some user-defined fields they have created in Outlook.
Okay, yeah, so browser search will still be available. I was a little bit, I guess, confused things slightly when I said that earlier. So yes, browser search is still available. It's still accessible in the same way. In terms of the second point about modifying the XML file, the bit I need to go and check on is A, is that still available? And B, if it is still available, is it still done in the same way in EV11? So the point being, if you go to EV11, maybe it works, the search, because it's obviously a new search, could work in a different way. So yes, browser search still available. Will they work? I need to go and check whether there's the option for that. And then in terms of will they specifically work, it's probably something that you need to test as part of a POC or some sort of test schedule.
Good. And then there was a second follow-up question to that, which was, we may have to just come back to you and double-check the context of this, but has the date issue been resolved in that can we use a drop-down for the date? I'm guessing that relates to the search functionality as well.
Okay, so the first part of the question, has the date issue been resolved? Without knowing what the specific date issue is, I'm not sure whether I can answer that or not. Certainly, one of the things we've been asked for a while is the availability to do a date picker as part of the when choosing dates. I'm not sure if that's the answer to the question or not. If it's not, then I'm happy to take an email directly, or Ross if you want to follow up. But certainly in the date field there is a drop down. You can enter the dates manually, and there is also a date picker which will allow you to choose the dates, and that's both in the GUI as well as in the web browser as well. I think the person who's asked the question said date picker is fine. I hope that answers the question then.
Good. I think so. That should just about cover it. So thank you very much for that question. We'll just give it another sort of 30 seconds. If there are any further questions from anybody, please could you just use the IM window just to type them in. Just while we're just waiting for that. And spoke slightly too soon. So question here, can you upgrade directly from 9 to 11?
I don't know the answer. I suspect not, because traditionally in EV you've had to go from major to major to major, so you've had to go from sort of 9 to 10, 10 to 11. That may have changed. Let me double check, and I definitely need to take an action on that one. I suspect you'll have to upgrade to 10 and then upgrade to 11. But I won't commit to that until I've spoken to some people. And what timelines are you looking for?
Yeah, I can clarify that point actually. Yeah, so you can't directly upgrade from 9 to 11, so you'd need to go through the step changes in order to get to 11. So the major step changes to get to 11.
Yeah, I thought that would be the case.
Yeah.
So there's a question then about what timelines for EV11. So EV11 is still officially scheduled for Q1. So Q1 in semantic terms is fiscal Q1. So April, May, June. There isn't yet a confirmed actual it will be released on this date. There's a meeting taking place next week where I believe they're going to tie down and finalise that date. But I'm fairly confident we should have something out in the next 3 months, and that will be an actual generally available as opposed to first availability or whatever.
So just one more question there to just come up. So are public folders still supported? I believe they are.
Yes. Yeah. So there's no functionality in terms of data sources or whatever, which has gone away in EV11. So yeah, if you want to do public folder archiving, then you can continue to do so.
Okay, great. So I think we're slightly over on time now, so apologies for that. I think we are roughly, we've roughly covered all the things we wanted to today. Some really great questions there. Just lastly, just want to say thank you to Muz and also to Jason for providing their input today. I hope it's been useful. It's worth a mention that if there's other questions, do drop a line to Muz or to Jason via email. Their email addresses are shown on the screen at the moment. I hope it's been a useful session today. We're available obviously to talk to you about possible upgrade plans. All of our bus customers, those with the Blue Source updating service, obviously we can look at sort of the timelines for that over the next sort of 3 to 6 months for you, or we'll also like to keep people updated on what's happening with the Windows Azure beta that we're running as well, because I'm sure there's some of you out there that are probably quite keen to know a little bit more about how that pans out. So thanks everybody, and we will look forward to getting in touch and hearing from you in the not too distant future.